going to be making the gemstone hat. This is really quick to work up. I have it in 6 different sizes, and today we're going to be making the size adult, and I'm going to be doing that to match my gemstone cardigan that has already been released as well. I thought it'd be fun to make a matching hat. For this project, you'll want a 5mm crochet hook for the body of the hat, and then a 4mm crochet hook for the ribbing. A stitch marker is always a good idea. You'll want some scissors to cut the yarn. We'll be doing a little bit of color work here, but it's really easy. A yarn needle to weave in those ends. Tape measures are never a bad idea because this is a fitted item. We do want to make sure that our gauge is correct and that's going to fit the intended size. And then optionally, I love putting these cute little labels. If you find any leather labels, or you can get them made on Etsy like I did, it's really fun to personalize these or make them for gifts. And then a pom-pom if you want, not required if you want a pom-pom for the top of the hat. The yarn we are using today is the Lion brand Color Theory by 2 of Wands. The colors of this are fantastic. I did the entire Harvest Hues collection in this yarn. If you want to check that collection out, it's really fun to work with. So today we're using the colors Moonbeam, the Tourmaline, the Himalayan Salt, and the Canyon. I love the way that they pair together nicely. Today on camera, I'll be making the adult size, so let's jump right in. Now this hat is made from bottom up, and we're going to start with the ribbing. So we'll need our 4mm hook and the color that we're going to be doing for the ribbing, which for me, this is going to be the Moonbeam. We are going to start by placing a slip knot onto our hook. And for the size adult, we will be chaining a total of 23. Now after chaining 23, we are going to start in the second chain from the hook, and I like to work those in the back hump, and we're going to single crochet. And then we are going to single crochet into each remaining chain across, no matter what size you're using. For the size adult, this will leave us with 22 total stitches because that last chain we did was our turning chain. Now after single crocheting for 22 stitches, we have this nice start, the row 1 for our ribbing. For row 2, that's going to be our repeat row for however many rows we need to do for the size that we're doing. So we will turn our work, chain 1, and then single crochet in the back loop only for each stitch across. But if you want the edges to be a little bit cleaner on each side of the ribbing, you can single crochet through both loops in the first stitch and the last stitch of this row. So I'm going to do that for this row 2, and then working in the back loops only. So we have the V's on the top here. We're going to be working only in the back loops of those all the way across. And this is row 2, and row 2 is what we are going to keep repeating. Now after completing row 2, for this size, we're going to repeat row 2 until we have a total of 72 rows for this size. And this is how the ribbing will end up looking. It's just one long strip. It is super stretchy. That's going to work great for fitting it around our head and having it be warm and holding against our head enough and not too loose. So after doing 72 rows of ribbing, we're going to join our current row with our first row. Now, once you have your 72 rows, we are going to join our current row with the first row worked. So we're just going to match those up and bring them together. And then we can chain 1 and working in the back loop only of your current row and the back loop only of the first row that we worked, we're going to slip stitch those stitches together. And that's what we're going to do for each stitch across until we have joined this. So just working in the back loops and slip stitching together of those 2 ends. Now that we have worked every single stitch, we are ready to start working in the round. And I know on this side, this seems a bit more noticeable, but when we flip it up, because it's a double brim, it's not noticeable hardly at all. It just looks like all the other ribbing all the way around. Now we're going to be working around this edge, but because we are going to start working in the round, we're going to switch hooks. We're going to go to our 5mm hook for the rest of this hat. Now we're going to be working some transition stitches along one edge of this brim, and that will help it to when we start working in the round, we have a nice transition between these. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. I love this line that gets left here. It makes it a nice edge, and then we're going to be creating some stitches to work into that will be easier than just working along the side of the brim, and it makes it nice and clean. So we're going to be doing a unique stitch here, but if you don't want to do the stitch, you can always slip stitch for this round, and then on the next round you can work into that slip stitch. So for this, we will be working one stitch per edge of the ribbing, which means our stitch count is going to stay at 72 for working in the round. I'm going to start along the very first edge of this brim and do a single crochet. And if you'd like, go ahead and mark that stitch just so that we keep track of it and you know when you have worked all the way around. I do suggest counting at the end of this round to make sure that you have the right stitch count before moving on. Now we are going to place our hook back into the left bar of that single crochet stitch. And then we're going to insert it along the edge of the row on the ribbing. Yarn over, pull that loop through the hat ribbing and through that vertical bar. Now we have 2 loops on the hook, and we are going to yarn over and pull through 2. And this is what we are going to be repeating all the way around. So we're going to go through that left bar into the row edge, yarn over and pull that up and through that first loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to work this all the way around until we have worked one of those stitches per row. And this is going to give us that nice look, that nice transition between the edge of the brim and the body of the hat. So as you can see, this creates a nice edge along here and then stitches that we can work into for that next round. Now that we have worked all the way around, we can go ahead and slip stitch to the very first stitch of that round. And then we're going to turn our work. And we're going to be working this next round on the wrong side of our work. We're going to be turning at the end of each round. So we're going to join and turn at the end of each round. Now this round will be done in the same color, but we're going to start doing our granny stitches. So into this very first stitch, I'm going to start with a stacked single crochet. And how we do that is we insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then we're going to go back to that left bar there, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2. And it's always a good idea on these stacked single crochets to go ahead and mark the top of that, and that way you know where to join when we get done with this round. Now into that same first stitch, we are going to do 2 more double crochets. And so granny stitches are often in groups of 3 double crochets, and that's how we're going to work the granny stitch groups for this hat. And after doing that first granny group, we'll skip 2 stitches. And then our repeat is going to be to do 3 double crochets into the next stitch. So that's a granny group. And now we are going to skip 2 stitches and then 3 double crochets into the next. And then skip 2 stitches. And that's our repeat all the way around. So we're just going to do 3 double crochets and skip 2 stitches all the way around for round 1, and then we'll come back and join and turn. But we will be joining with a new color, so I'm going to come back when I get to the end of this round. Now that I'm on the last double crochet stitch of this round, we are going to be switching to our color B. Now the color B that I'll be doing for this colorway is going to be the color Canyon. So I've stopped before doing the last yarn over of the last double crochet stitch. And this is where we're going to bring in our new color, leaving the tail end on the wrong side of the work. So that's on the inside of the hat. And then I'm going to yarn over with my new color to finish out this round, and then slip stitch to that very first stitch in the round, and that will join. And now when we turn our work on the next round, we are ready and set up to work the round 2 of this colorwork granny stitch portion of the hat. So this is the body of the hat. But since we won't need our moonbeam color, our color A, for a while, we can go ahead and fasten that off. We're not going to carry it as far as it would take up the inside of the hat until we were to use it again. I think it's best just to fasten it off. Now for the very first space in this round, because when we're working granny groups, we're going to be working in the spaces now between the granny groups, so these spaces. We're going to start by doing a stacked single crochet, and you can mark the stitch if you would like, and then 2 more double crochets into that first space. And if you want, you can kind of tug at your tail ends to really tighten that down so that this space doesn't stretch out too much. Now notice I have stopped once again before that last yarn over for this granny group. And the reason why is because we are actually going to be taking our color C, and on that very last yarn over, we're going to switch to our color C because the next group of stitches is in the color C. So we're going to work 3 double crochets into that next space. And we will be changing back to our color B. So I've stopped on that very last yarn over. I'm going to grab my color B and yarn over with that to set myself up for the next space. Now the color that you're not using, you're just going to lay it to the back of your work. And that's where it's going to stay while we work the color that we're using in the moment. So now when we're ready to switch back, because for this round we're changing colors every other group, we are just simply going to lay the color B to the back of our work. And what that does on the back is we can start to see these floats or these carries, and that will keep the color work nice and neat, and that way it won't show through to the front. So we're just floating these along the back as we go, and that's why we just simply drop them to the back of our work. And we don't need to, when we pick the colors back up again, we don't need to pull tight. I'm just bringing this to the front, looping through. I kind of tightened down the previous stitch, but as far as the back goes, we don't want that to be incredibly tight because that could mess up the size of the hat. It won't allow for that drape and that stretch to happen when we wear it. So you don't want these floats to be tight, and we're just going to let them sit there until the next round where we're going to be working over them a bit more, and I'll show you how to do that when we get there. So I'm going to go all the way around until I get to the last space of this round, just changing colors for every other granny group. Now, as we come to the end of round 2, we do not need to change colors because round 3 is done in the color C. So I'm going to join to the top of the stitch from the very first stitch of this round and tighten that down. And then we can go ahead and we can fasten off our color B because we won't need it for a while. I'm not going to carry it up the inside. I will weave those ends in later. And now we're going to turn and work round 3. And round 3 is just going to be in this one solid color in the color C. So we're going to start by doing that stacked single crochet. And then we're going to be working 2 more double crochets into that same space. We're going to be working that all the way around, 3 double crochets into each space. But what I want to talk about here is when we get to this point where we have all these floats, we always want to be working underneath those floats when we go into this space. So you don't want to go over it. You always want to go underneath all of those floats. And what that does too is it kind of locks it down, makes it a float that's not quite as long or wide between the stitches, and it helps hide it right behind those stitches, and it makes it a little bit less noticeable on the back side as well. So you can see how long this float is here, and when we work into the next space working underneath it, it locks that float down to be less noticeable. Not that you'll see it, it's on the inside of the work, but also it keeps it from showing on the front and from catching on anything like fingers if we were putting on the hat, and it makes it a really short float at that point compared to before we're working this round. And you can't see anything with the floats on the front, and it's really nice and clean. So for this round, we're simply going to be working the granny stitch, so 3 double crochets into every single space with the color C all the way around. Now at the end of round 3, we can go ahead and just slip stitch to join with this same color because we'll be starting the next round with the color C, but we will also be adding the color D. So we're going to rotate our work and turn our work. And we're going to start by doing our very first granny group with this color. So the same way we've started the previous rounds, but we're going to stop before that very last stitch, and this is where we will bring in our color D. So whatever color you're using for your color D, we're going to yarn over and pull that through, and then we're going to work the color D for the next group. And then we will be switching back to the color C, and we'll be rotating between these two colors for each group all the way around. So keep doing that, working 3 double crochets or granny group in each space, changing the colors for each space all the way around. Now at the end of round 4, we're going to go back to the color C, and we're going to join to the first stitch of this row, and we're going to be using the color C on the next round. So we are going to fasten off the color D. We can tuck that tail in to work later, and we're going to turn our work. And now we're going to repeat round 3 where we just worked this color all the way around without changing colors. So just a solid round in this color, repeating round 3. At the end of round 5, we will be changing colors. So you'll want to bring your color C into the front of your work because we want to leave the tail end on the wrong side of our work. And then we're going to grab the color B, and we're going to yarn over with the color B to finish out this round and join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And then we're going to be moving on to round 6. Now round 6 is simply a repeat of round 2, using the same color work pattern. So just repeat round 2 for round 6. Now at the end of round 6, on the very last stitch, we are going to yarn over and bring back in our color A, and then join with a slip stitch to the very first stitch of the round. And now we're going to turn our work, and we're simply going to work color A. This means that you can take every single color, so even the color B and C, and we can fasten those off. For the remainder of this hat, we will be working in the color A. So we're going to turn our work, and we're going to start with a stacked single crochet and 2 more double crochets into the same stitch, and then we're just going to work those granny groups all the way around, joining and turning at the end of each round. Now you can take the time now to weave in these ends, or you can do so later when you are finished with the hat. Now for this size, we're going to continue to work in the color A until there are a total of 15 rounds of the granny stitch, and that includes that color work. So once we get to a total of 15 rounds, come on back for the very last round. Now that I have a total of 15 rounds of the granny stitches, we're ready for the 16th round, and this one we're just going to do slightly different so that it's easier to scrunch the top of this together to finish it off. We're going to start by doing a stacked single crochet, and then only 1 more double crochet into that space. And in the next space, we're simply going to double crochet 2. So instead of double crocheting 3 into each space, we're simply going to be double crocheting 2 into each space, which will decrease that stitch count on this final round. For the size adult hat, this will decrease the stitch count to 48 stitches. After working that final round all the way around, we can join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of that round, and then fasten off, but leave a little bit of a longer tail because we're going to use this tail to close the top of the hat. We can pull that tail in through and then grab your yarn needle. Now to close the top of this hat, we are going to weave through the front loop only, so the loop facing us, of each stitch around. And this will allow us to close it without having to grab the whole stitch. It kind of helps us have less fabric to scrunch the top of this hat. So just loop through the front loop of each stitch around, and then we will cinch that closed by pulling that tail end. Now once we have worked that all the way around, we can simply take the tail end and just pull that down until we get rid of that hole, and then take your yarn needle and we're going to weave around again and cinching that tightly. If you want to leave a small opening. Now we're going to take our yarn needle and we're going to go around again. We're just going to go through those same loops, and you don't have to catch them all this time, as we continue to pull that down so that the opening closes tightly. So I'm just going to weave that around, securing it as I cinch it closed until it stops popping open and having that gap. We're just going to keep on working around, pulling that tail end as we go. And then once that is secured closed, you can go ahead and weave in your tail end, going back and forth in opposite directions so that we make sure that this does not come undone. Now at this point, if you don't want to add any embellishments to your hat, that's totally fine. You can simply flip up that brim and wear it. Now what I'm going to do is I really like to place a pom-pom on the top of my hats. I just really like pom-poms. You may not. I found this one that matches one of these accent colors. So I'm going to sew a button on the inside. That way this loop can go through the top of the hat. I'll use a crochet hook to pull it through and then loop it around the button so that the pom-pom stays in place. And I also have these really cute tags I like to put on my hat too. You can find some tags that have handmade by or made with love at some craft stores, or Etsy has a lot of great custom tags as well. And as you can see, there are so many cute color combinations to make with this to make it either match your winter clothing or add a pop of color as an accent to an outfit. And with it coming in 6 sizes, you can make one for the entire family. Thank you so much for enjoying this video. Please hit that subscribe button and come back for some more fun projects soon.